Welcome all. This video is especially meant for semester 5 students of North Bengal University. The topic, as you all can see, is postmodernism via modernism. The purpose here is to explain postmodernism, but it would be incomplete if we do not discuss placing it adjacent to modernism, and so I chose such a title. Now, with no further ado, let's dive into today's topic. First, we will discuss the word post in postmodernism. Now, as you can see in the screen, the post may imply three things. Post, the way we use it in our day-to-day speech, as something that comes after, which is a way of expressing something with respect to time. So this can be one meaning of post. Thus, post can mean here chronological after. And of course, postmodernism comes after modernism, and hence this temporal position can be a reason of the use of the prefix post. The second is a kind of causal effect of chronological progression. Since post means after, hence it can signify replacement, and hence post may also suggest replacement as in postmodernism. The post may also indicate critical engagement, quite like the way post-colonialism does. Such a definition would make it more of a way of thinking and doing, like thinking and doing literature, trying to trace the certain critical angles to it, which falls under the category of postmodern. Now, when we are talking about postmodern, based on the above three propositions, before confirming any or all of the above, one thing can be said, that it in some way is related to modernism. Means postmodernism is in some way related to modernism. We will come back to postmodernism, but let's first understand a word or two about moderns. The current slide shows who are the moderns. T.S. Eliot, Joyce, Pound, Proust, Kafka are some of the eminent moderns. Now the question is, why are they moderns? You can see on the screen the conditions that qualify one as modern. Reason, popular and elite distinction, innovation, fragmentation, aesthetic self-reflexivity. Now let's talk about each of the topics given on the screen. Reason. Now what does reason imply? Reason means rationality. Say for instance, if we compare Eliot's poetry with that of the Romantics, we find a stark difference. The Romantics are personal and emotional in their approach. Say for instance, Wordsworth defines poetry as spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions, whereas we get in Eliot's poetry not a flow of emotion but reason. In Holloman, for instance, or in The Westland, he is reasoning his viewpoint through realistic images. Okay. Now the second topic is very clear. It is that they believed in this popular and elite demarcation. The moderns believed in this demarcation. The third topic is innovation. The poet Ezra Pound in 1934 injunction to make it new clarifies this thesis or this theories of the moderns very well. Now they were people who were into trying new ways. They were very much interested in innovative methods, innovative themes, innovative techniques. As for example, think about the stream of consciousness narrative that Virginia Woolf or James Joyce uses. The psychological narration is an innovation of the moderns, quite like imagism in the poetry that Eliot uses. Now, imagism is also a modern innovation, the innovation by the modern poets. Now, fourthly, the fourth topic here is fragmentation. Now, say for instance, we talk of images poetry, we are referring to collage of images. Or if we refer to themes even, say for instance as in Holloman, Eliot is actually talking about living as fragmented beings with hollowness ever increasing within. So this is how this fragmentation thing works in the modern. The fifth point is aesthetic self-reflexivity. Aesthetic self-reflexivity refers to artifacts exploring their own constitution, construction, and shape. If you look at the picture in the screen, you will understand this better. The image is about a sketch artist who is trying to create his sketch. what the picture is doing is, it is exploring the way an artist is creating a sketch out of himself, the mirror reflection from the mirror reflection of himself, which also perhaps is hinting at the way this picture was created or captured or painted that we are seeing in the screen. So these are the things that one needs to know to understand modernism. But now if you look at the screen carefully once again, you will see of the 5 features, the last 3 are written in a different color. Well, it's because the last 3 are also the features of postmodernism. Then the question arises that how are we to differentiate between these two? Okay, don't worry, I'll guide you through. Here in the screen, you can see a poem written by a contemporary poet, Amber Tamblyn, A New Dawning. Now see what the poem reads. For our New York cities, from sun's first shine, we walk all day through a dream surreal. Our minds wander a new world from inside windowsills. We go to bed half asleep, eyes defiant for the crave of newsfeed, quenching our dread on the bad blood of blue light not sent from the moon. Here, the poet is talking about walking all day, which suggests labor, through a dream surreal which hints at the fragmented living, and about the minds wandering into the world outside, which is referred to as a new world. The poet also speaks about the indulgences of postmodern life through the words crave of newsfeed. Right? We all crave for this newsfeed which are full of truth and lies. And the poet is also talking about eyes wanting sleep. The eyes are rejecting this craving. The moon in the poem is unblemished, and the night light is a blue light which is not coming from the moon. Now let's move on to the next poem. The next poem on the screen is from Eliot, The Westland. The Burial of the Dead. This is the first section of the poem, The Westland. The poem reads something like this. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over Strandbergs with a shower of rain. Now in the poem you can see April, lilacs and summer are used as cruelest. Surprise, which is mixing of memory and desire, whereas winter is said to have kept them warm, which is of course oxymoronic, because winter never keeps us warm, right? Winter is something which is connected with barrenness. Winter is something which is connected with chill, cold. So winter cannot keep us warm, but the poet is using here winter kept us warm. So it is a kind of oxymoronic use. Okay, now so we are done with these 2 poems. We have read the poems, we have understood slightly of the poems. Now let's talk about the moods of the 2 poems. Tamblyn begins the poem with the words sun's first shine. So what she's talking about, she's also talking about a new world of dreams and also of dreams. In the line, eyes defiant for the crave of new feed, she is suggesting difference without any suggestion. She is not telling that whether the eye which is registering, the eyes which are registering this craving for news feed are good or bad, or whether this craving is good or bad. The eyes are rejecting the craving of news feed also implies there are people with this craving, and hence perhaps the suggestion of plurality with the use of the words New York cities. Now, it's not New York City, it is New York cities. This is the way she refers to New York. Right, so when she's talking about cities, which is a plural, maybe she's also talking about plurality, which is suggested also through the line eyes defiant for the crave of news feed. Finally, the bad blood is not sent from the moon. The moon is unblemished. Does dream new world, sun's first shine, and above all the name, a new dawning, suggest a kind of optimism. Eyes defiant for the crave of news feed suggest differences and acceptance of differences. Fragmentation here arises from plurality and individuality. Okay, let's talk about the second poem, that is the Wasteland. The poem of Wasteland, what it is doing is, on the other hand, it is presenting a feeling of hopelessness coming with change from the very title itself. Means wasteland, something that has been wasted, something that is of no use, something from which nothing fruitful is coming out. The oxymoronic usage also in the poem that we find suggests conflict, and individual life itself is torn between conflicts, right? Winter warm means summer is surprising, winter kept us warm, and then mixing of memory and desire, and April is the cruelest month. So there is a kind of conflict going on which the poem is talking about, maybe which is going on in the individual psyche of the people who are residing in this wasteland. Thus we can say that from these two poems, what we can see is that a new dawning is about optimism, about hope. There's a kind of optimistic note in spite of fragmentation, in spite of the things that there are certain differences that the poet is speaking about. In spite of that, there is a kind of optimism. And in case of Wasteland, what do we find? We find pessimism. So from this, it can be said that postmodernism is more optimistic than modernism in its mood, and is more accommodating also, right? Because it is accepting the differences, not as something which is very bad. It is just accepting. Thus, now I would like to end today's discussion with what Todd Gitlin had to say about these two things, means modernism and postmodernism. Modernism tore up unity, and postmodernism has been enjoying the shreds. So, since if you actually go back to the two poems, you will see that both the poems are talking about conflicts, both the poems are talking about differences, about plurality, about fragmentation. But what the first poem that Tamblyn has written is talking about, it is still has kind of has a kind of optimistic note, right, that I have already spoken about. So it is kind of accepting the things. It is kind of accepting the fragmentation, the plurality that is coming, that is present in the society. But what the modernist writing that Eliot has written is doing, it is just talking about differences. It is just presenting the darker sides of things. It is having a pessimistic note. The summer, which is the season of brightness, is referred to as something that is cruel, while winter, which is the season of barrenness, is referred to as something which is very much warm. So you can well understand there is a kind of dissatisfaction working in the poem The Wasteland. Okay, so this is what Todd Gitlin means. These two poems, if you read these two poems adjacently, there are other poems also. If you read a modernist and a postmodernist poem adjacently, side by side, what you'll see is that the postmodernist poem is kind of not that pessimist. It may not be a happy work. It may not be a happy, poem or novel or whatever. But the thing is, there's a kind of acceptance, and there's a kind of acceptance of plurality, and also acceptance of fragmentation. But modernist writing as such, which is actually to a certain extent dissatisfied and mourning with this type of writing, this type of situation that the moderns were facing, means what happened is during the world wars, what was happening is they were dissatisfied about the life they had then. They were dissatisfied with the things that were happening to common people, in spite of not being a part of the bigger things. The common people were also suffering, right? So the moderns were kind of dissatisfied, so they were not happy with the life they were leading. And they were also not happy with this wars and things going on. So there was a kind of they felt a kind of division or fragmentation between the soul and the body. The soul wanted peace, and the body was busy with all this war things, right? So there is a kind of difference in the mood basically between a modernist and a postmodernist writing. Or if you talk about postmodernism, you will see there is, like when we are talking about postmodernist feminism also, we are talking about differences. We are talking about we are actually talking about trying to understand these differences and accept these differences as norms. But modernists are not very much has that kind of acceptance towards differences. They want a kind of coherence. But postmodernism kind of celebrates the differences of human beings. Okay, so today's discussion can be considered as a preliminary introduction. I'll discuss the topic in depth in the next video. Thank you all.